ever since I started my photography career at 2018. It's almost 6 to 8 years now, and the way I'm editing things is totally different now. There are the fundamental basics of editing which you can't change, which thankfully I've learned during my earlier stages, which has helped me throughout my career. So I have this habit of saving all of my edits in a PSD file, which is a Photoshop dedicated file, which retains all the layers, and you can always go back to see how you have edited it. And you can always make changes to the raw file. And this particular image that I'm going to show to you today, I think I shot it somewhere during 2018. So I used to have this Nikon D3 400 camera body during then, and that was a time when I bought my first prime lens, which is a 50 mm. So I took this lens to the beach to take some pictures. There was this small girl who had this most powerful eyes that I've ever seen in my life, and she reminded me of this famous picture of this Afghan girl by Steve McCurry. I happened to see her, and there was this amazing golden light that came from sunrise. So she just came right to me, and she was talking something. I just had a chat with her, and I looked at her parents at the back, and they were okay with me photographing her. And then I took this picture of her. So every other day, I used to wake up, I used to go back to the same edit and try to improve it again and again to get the best version of it. And I was hooked to this picture for almost a week. And now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to re-edit the image because the image is already perfect. So now I'm going to show you the PSD file and take you through step by step on how I've edited it in the past, and show you the basics which you should do as a beginner, as a professional, as whatever you want to be. So let's get to the edit table and I'll show you what this picture is. I've now opened the PSD file in Photoshop, and now you can see this is the image straight out of camera. I don't have the EXIF for this picture, but I'm pretty sure I shot it at 1.8 or f2, and the ISO would be very minimum because the sun was very good and it was very bright early in the morning, and the shutter speed would be just to compensate the exposure. So somewhere maybe over 1/500 to 1/1000, considering the brightness of the scene, would be the setup for this picture. Is all the edits that I've done to achieve the final image, which I'm going to show you now. The first thing that I've did is I've just made a copy of the file, and then if you notice here, this hair on her face, I felt this to be disturbing. I mean, being a street photographer, you can leave it as it is. I just wanted it to be perfect, and with the maturity that I had in the past, I really wanted to remove it. So I removed it using probably a remove tool. Maybe I would have used either healing brush tool or spot healing, and then I would have made a copy and then removed it. The second thing that I've done here is I've added a curves layer, and then you can see I've masked the curves layer right on the shadow side of a face. This is a process that you would call dodge and burn, where you make the shadows darker and the bright areas brighter to sort of add contrast to the image. You can also term it the way as you make the areas dark that you want to be dark, and you make the areas bright that you want it to be bright, like you taking control over the scene. I see dodge and burn this way, where I take control over the scene and sort of play with the shadows and the highlights of the scene. So in this, I wanted the shadows to be even darker, so that's why I've added a curves layer and made it dark. And then again, this is for highlights. What I felt here is I felt the highlights to be too strong, and I felt like I was losing details on her face, even though if I see it, I mean, it looks perfect. But then I wanted to sort of bring back the details on the highlight side, so I've added a curves layer there as well, and then I've masked it right to her face, and then I've sort of brought back the details there. You can see this is the mask that I've used on her face, and see I have particularly masked out the highlights here as well, or else the scene would look odd if you don't mask out all the highlights. And it was a very amateur brushwork that I did in the past. Sorry about the edit. The second thing that I did is I really wanted to add contrast to make the darks even darker, as in blacks even darker and the whites to add the contrast, the pop to the image. I've added a levels layer, and then you can see I've played around with levels here, which have made the contrast pop and sort of added some dynamics to the image. And then the next thing I've done is added a selective color layer. As you can see, I've just played with the reds here. Why reds in particular is because you can see a lot of reds in the scene. So I've just reduced the reds, sort of played with the cyan and reduced the reds to sort of turn it slightly to the yellowish tone, because I liked it that way during then. But honestly, if you ask me now, I think I like the reddish tone that the picture has. And then this is a curves layer. You can see I've added it just on the outer edges. So why I did this, because when I looked at this image, the basic principle when you're taking a picture or when you're editing a picture is you want the people to focus on the subject. And then in this image, even though she is well lit and everything, the background has a lot of details, not in terms of focus but in terms of light. So everything looks flat. So I thought if I make the background even darker, you can easily make the subject pop in the picture. So that's what I've did. I've sort of brought down the highlights from the backdrop, which immediately makes the subject pop out. And then in the next layer, I think I've sort of used a black and white layer to see, sort of bring details back from the reds. This is something that you can do, which is a clever thing I learned through YouTube, where you can use a black and white layer to sort of bring back the details from the skin here, where you just have to play with the reds. It sort of makes the reds go dark and bring back the details from the skin, which is really good for skin tones. And then I've added a selective color as well. This is just making minor corrections of the color. It's not drastically making any difference to the image. And then another levels layer. See, this is something that I do. I create a levels layer and then I wanted to change something, but then eventually as I go through the process, I wanted, or I felt this is not needed, so I just make it in neutral, but then I don't delete it. So it's just there, but you can see it does nothing to the image. And then the curves layer. This is a very important curves layer. So what this does is it makes the details in her eyes pop even more. She has very detailed eyes in the first glance, and then this curves, as you can see, it just makes her eyes pop. And then you can even see me in her eyes, me shooting. This is my friend standing right next to me, and this is me shooting. You can see my hand posted like this, doing something here. So I've brought back some details from her eyes by using a curves layer. My editing process is mainly dodge and burn, which breaks or makes an image. You can see. So again, I wanted people to focus on her face and not on her hands, not on her dress or any other part. That's why I've added a layer which highlights just on her face. So everything else is selected except her face, because I'm going to make it dark, not bright. I usually like to make things darker than brighter, so that the exposure of the image remains same. You're just making the external areas darker so that you're not messing up on the actual face, and you leave it as it is from how you've shot it. So now, as you can see, I've made all the other external areas darker. More selective layer. See, now what I've done is I felt the image to be too contrasty. I'm telling you, editing is a back and forth process. Whatever that worked for you half an hour ago might not work for you as you go through the process. I felt again the darks to be too dark and the image is too contrasty. So what I've done is I've used a selective layer to sort of bring back from some details from it. That's what I've done, brought back some layers. I don't know what I've enabled, but something that I've enabled to sort of bring back details from the shadows to sort of make it flatter.
ஹலோ
சொல்லு பூம்.
ராஜ் வீட்ல பாஸ்தா இருக்கா?
இல்ல பூம், காலி பூம்.
உனக்கு மெட்டில ஏதாவது வேணுமா?
எனக்குலாம் எது வேணாம் நான் சாப்பிட்டேன், நல்லாவே சாப்பிட்டேன்.
சரி அப்ப நான் எனக்கும் எதுவும் வாங்கல.
சரி ஓகே, பட்னி கடை. பை பாய். உயிரை வாங்குவா சார், உயிரை வாங்குவா.
Your call has been.
And this really does nothing to the image. I've just brought back the contrast here using selective color. You can just skip it and continue with the rest. And more dodge and burn, bringing back the details, or and more dodge and burn. It's just dodge and burn throughout, but I've done it in layers. I'm trying to bring back the focus back on her face by making the other areas dark. And then a curves layer. Again, I've done nothing. This adds nothing to the picture. I think I've asked I think I've used a camera raw filter here to sort of break the contrast a bit, and then you can see the picture is too contrast here, so I've used it to sort of bring back the details here and sort of, I mean, if you think about it, this really does nothing to the image, just makes it lose a little bit of contrast. Maybe I wanted to lose a little bit of contrast to camera or filter. I was just experimenting during then, so don't mind it. You can leave it this way, and then this is the sharpening layer. You can see I've added sharpness to the image. How I used to do sharpening is I either go to filter and then you can use sharpening and sharpen, or other and use high pass to sharpen. Now I do sharpening in a different way. So I've done that, and then now you can see I've desaturated the image because this felt a little too saturated for me. I don't know what I was thinking during then. This looks perfect to me. If you look at my style now, this is a perfectly saturated picture for me. This is not oversaturating, but again, this is where the world changes. These two layers are very crucial, and you can easily neglect this part of the edit, but I felt this is very crucial because you can see now everything is perfect in this image, but then before using this layer, you think this is already a perfect image, nothing should change in this image, everything is perfect. But if you make this change that I'm going to do now with the curves, you can't unsee it, because this is a very crucial change which I learned through different videos that I watched in YouTube, and this is a very crucial edit, I'm telling you. You see, I'm going to make the picture go darker in a certain area of the picture, and you wouldn't guess where. But you can guess it because I've already highlighted the mask here. But then if you do this, you're making the shadows in her hair go down, because now if you see this and this looks 100% better. Why? Because you can see a lot of light, as in a lot of light is falling on her hair. There's a lot of highlights here. So what I did here was I masked out her hair. So now if you can see, what I've done is I've masked her hair, and then I've reduced the exposure there. Not just the exposure, I've reduced the shadows, and I've reduced the highlights to bring back some darkness to it. Now if you see, it makes hell lot of difference. And then everything else is dark. The background is dark, the hair is dark, you've added a little darkness here, and then your focus goes straight to her beautiful face and her beautiful eyes. If you look at it, this is the before. which is already a great image. Nobody would ask you to edit it, but this is what editing does to an image. What a perfect image. I mean, I can't really call my image perfect, but the edit is so good. The way it has turned out is so good. Everything in this image is perfect. I have my stupid name here, which I was doing a lot of it in the past, but the before and after makes hell lot of difference in the image. You can see. I'm telling you, you can make or break an image with editing, and if you really know the basics, because as you can see, I've done nothing in this. It's just basic dodge and burn. I've added details to her eyes. I've played with the color, brought back some details from the skin tones, and just added sharpening. Very, very, very basic editing, but even that basic editing can make wonderful, wonderful changes to your image, and also it can easily make your images stand out from all the images that you see on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching this another tutorial, which is not perfect. This is how I've learned it, and this is how I've done it in the past. This is the edit that I did like 6 years ago. So I mean, there would be definitely flaws in it, but I just wanted to go back to it and see sort of a learning curve for me as well as you, so that we both can learn through this process. And I really hope this video helps you learn something, but not everything through this. So take care. I'll see you in the next video.